We will change the game. We will not fight this red ocean war. We will create a blue ocean for ourselves. Optimize ideal times. We have created content delivered on the mobile, and we have said to our people from a policy standpoint, the moment you log on to your mobile, if you leave home at 7 in the morning and you get to office at 9, if you log on to your mobile at 7 or 7:30 and begin to play around with these games and learnings and webinars and all of that, your attendance time begins to get counted. So what are we doing? We are engaging our people on their instrument from the moment they leave home. So I have their mind share. And they're happy because, we are still seen as a flexible company, as a great employer of choice company, and nobody minds that extra travel, so on and so forth. So these are 2 or 3 design principles or strategies, and perhaps if I get a chance again, I'll give you 1 or 2 more examples of what we've done.
So Rajiv is on the other side. So he's the one who provides these games and simulations to companies. So Rajiv, how is it in your company? What kind of trends are really coming around? So speak a little about that. What are people asking you to design?
Sure. So before I answer that, so building on what Harleena was mentioning, let's go back to the basics. Has anyone heard of this German psychologist called Hermann Ebbinghaus? Nobody? Have you heard of this phrase called the learning curve? Many of us? He's a person who basically coined that phrase. Now, what is ironic is it's the same person who also coined the phrase the forgetting curve. And we have conveniently forgotten that. So now what he says is, 40 minutes after you sit in a lecture type of a setting, very similar to this, you're listening to us. 40 minutes after the session is over, what percentage of whatever we have said do you think will still stay in your minds? Come, it's okay, be brutal. It's okay, we'll take it. 2% will stay in your minds? 2% will stay in your minds? How does that make us feel? 10%, 15%? Now, you see where I'm going with this, right? So the numbers are not that bad actually. He says 40% still stays. The following morning, it goes down to 20%. A week from now, I bet my last dollar on it, you would have forgotten that you were here in the first place. Right? That's how we are wired, right? This is scientifically proven. Let's not try and challenge it. So the point I'm making is we spend so much time into the lecture format, knowing fully well that we are all not great listeners. We don't absorb information really well. Forget about application later on. That's not going to happen. In the morning session, we spent a lot of time talking about learning effectiveness. How do we calculate the ROI? What are we actually talking about? If 2% is what we are going to retain, why are we even talking about application and business impact? That's very, very far away, right? Let's not even talk about it. So how do we actually turn this on its head? If we know this to be true, how do we redesign this? So instead of cramming everything into a day-long session or 5-day leadership workshop, can we space it out? Spacing in learning is a great thing because the drip irrigation model, as they call it in agriculture, is the same way our minds also works, right? You absorb little by little bite-sized learning over a period of time. Now, many of you are learning professionals. You would know about the Kirkpatrick model. Some of us have come across this. Now, what are those levels in a Kirkpatrick model? Level 1 is what? Reaction. Level 2 is learning. Level 3 is behavior. And then you have business impact, right? That's the last level. Now, think about a designer of Candy Crush. Okay, so in many ways, he's trying to change your behavior. Does he start from level 1? Does he start by saying, okay, I'm going to start from level 1 and then I'll impart some knowledge and then level 3 and some... No, they don't think like that, right? So they directly do something to you using gamification principles that directly goes to level 3, right? And that is very crucial. To answer your question on how learning has to be designed is, for the longest time, I think we've focused a lot on cognitive part of learning. We are focusing all of our learning to the left part of the brain. But what about our entire being? We don't just learn through our heads. Our hearts have to be involved. Our hands have to be involved, right? That's when true learning, deep learning actually happens, right? So how can we make use of that? So, true gamification actually helps you change behaviors. That's the toughest part of any learning professional, right? Knowledge is fine. There's so much out there. Content is ubiquitous. Coursera, you name it. I mean, if you want to make a nuclear bomb today, you have the recipe for it online. Why are we spending that time inside the classroom, right? The classroom now has to add a different flavor. We have to focus on the context, and we have to focus on practice, right? I think in the morning somebody spoke about it, the 10,000 hour rule. I think that rule by itself has been discredited, but then the underlying principle is so relevant, right? It's only when you practice does it become muscle memories, so that behaviors change, and then business impact happens. So can we repurpose or recast our classrooms into something where people will have fun, they will practice, they get feedback so that they are ready for the real world. Building on top of the pilot example, the flight simulator, they practice under different conditions, you fail, you are expected to fail in those situations, and only through your failure you learn well so that when you actually fly a plane, you don't make a mistake, right? I think those are some principles that we need to think about when we do our next learning design.
Great. So before I move on to you, Rituraj, I just thought that since I belong to a technology company, so our trainings are, they're all, the meetings are instant. So everything is, I carry 2 phones because I can make a Skype call, I can have meetings, so the world around us is changing. So therefore the way we have viewed our trainings, our learnings also therefore have to change. For instance, we have trainings which are, how many of you have watched Star Trek? What would Captain Kirk say? Beam me up, Scotty. Isn't that what he said? So that's in the Accenture world, that is reality. So when we go to school, when I went to MD school, we actually had transposition, where we had leaders who were speaking to us from Paris or XYZ, and they were actually, you felt that there was a desk like this, you could see the person's image, and he was training you. So the world of the training is also changing. So gone are the days when we said, okay, we will design a PowerPoint presentation, we will take it through people, this is the content. Yes, basic methodology still remains the same, but obviously it has changed. So in Lupin, what exactly are you doing, Rituraj?
There are 3 things that we have picked up specifically in Lupin. Number 1, there is a lot of boring training that goes on in the name of good manufacturing practices, and even in the name of soft skills sometimes. A lot of boring stuff happens. How do you make learning fun? So there's been gamification put around it, and a continuous evolution of how gamification would make it even more fun-filled is one piece that we've been handling over the last 3-4 years now. The other piece that we've actually focused on is testing, understanding, and retention in terms of application. So what we do in Lupin is every second day at a fixed time at 5 p.m. on your mobile phones, you receive a definition, a concept, or a term explained. It's a very small message. It's not WhatsApp, it's the conventional message. We're going to put it on WhatsApp now. Every alternate day it reaches me at 5 o'clock, so I take it for granted. We respect that fact. Best of our relationships are taken for granted by us. So we let people take these messages for granted. At every end of the month, there is a quiz that happens on last month's messages. These messages are basically your own terms which are relevant to you. So when, for example, a manufacturing chemist wants to know what is the meaning of granulation, strictly technically speaking, so he understands, he can go to that. Similarly, when a medical representative wants to know how to handle objections of my doctors, what are the 3 steps for, quick 3 steps for that, so he can access that. So we test his retention and his application possibility every end of the month. That is when he can go back to his message box and check all the messages, and then that's okay, absolutely not an issue. It's like open book exam. But we have started this practice for last more than 3 years now. Noteworthy here is the participation in these mobile quizzes every month end has been steadily increasing and has reached in its highest levels to 85%. 85% of the people respond to mobile quiz, and out of these 85%, more than 60% give right responses, and then we declare some winners in various teams, etc. So that's the kind of gamification that we've done around it. What we have also realized in the process over last few years is that people need to be provided some surprise situations where they can actually see themselves behaving a little differently in different responses. So we would give them totally alien situations to actually deal with. This could be in form of simulations, it could be in form of just games. For example, we have started asking our induction batches to create flash mobs once in a while, not regularly, but once in a while we ask them to do a flash mob of what they have learned. Within 5-7 minutes, just do whatever you want to do and come up from nowhere and emerge and do something and just vanish, and let's see what you can do. Now, people are not really experts in doing flash mob kind of activity, but this has become very, very popular with our new joiners, and this has been going on for last 2.5-3 years now. We don't do it in every batch, but there is a great demand for us to do it in every batch. Now, this kind of an exercise is making them go back to whatever they have picked up over last 4-5 days. It's a 10-day induction program that we have. So over last 3-4 days or 5-6 days, what have they gone and grabbed, and how can they actually present it in a very interesting manner? It is also talking about their sense of pride in the company, the kind of learning and how deep that learning has gone in. So these are some of the interesting ways in which we had not been doing it earlier, but we've started finding it useful.
Thank you, Rituraj. So just to see that you're not sleeping and after a very good lunch, I just want to ask you as L&OD professionals, how do you think you can ensure that there is an ROI? Because I believe that was the last topic which was there. So what are the small little things that you've been doing from the audience, please? Before I move on to Damodar and understand what technology is doing. Just a couple of responses. Yeah, go on.
Our students, normally the marketing and finance students feel that HR is boring. They don't know anything. So we thought let's brand HR in our college and make other students realize the importance. So what we did is we picked up pure HR and some general management concepts. It was for all the first year and second year students. And we as an HR team with my specialization students planned different games. Like for example, we had puzzle, including HR concepts. We had a Pictionary. So you have an HR concept, you have to do the Pictionary thing, and you have to enact it. We did a pilot thing. We did only as an intra-college activity. We got a superb response, and we are now thinking to take it at inter-college level. And that's how we did it at our place, but classroom setting as of now.
Any other examples?
Yeah, mind mapping. Mind mapping helps a lot for recording the information into the brain, retaining it to some time, and recall. And I could see the results even after several years. They could relate to the context that is being processed in the brain. So mind mapping is even a housewife can actually use mind mapping for a better use of cooking and cooking skills.
Well, I think the learning and development professionals have earned a seat on the table, and but it is how you are able to effectively ensure that you engage your audience. So to hear more of what technology companies are doing, what is TCS really doing to ensure that gamification is happening and people are really engaged?
Yeah, another interesting angle. I have problem with the way gamification is understood also by the industry. Fundamental problem. What happens is people play games and they get addicted to it. So they don't play real games, right? So flight simulator, it can be great pilot over a mobile. Go and fly a plane, you'll know the fun. So talk about ROI of gamification is, was the gamification strong enough, inspiring enough, so that after few rounds, right, the learner actually got rid of mobile and actually ran to play the game. That's what is my definition of gamification.